any suggestions, ask Watcher for use of images due to the legal situation. I live in Germany. Unsplash.com. Go to unsplash.com. I do like little video stories every week on Thursday. You can find them on Twitter and YouTube. My video stories, funny enough, was about unsplash.com, where you can find images that are free, use, retouch, recolor, resize. They are fantastic. I think Coco is stuck in the bedroom, and I'm going to go release her before she throws up on something. You can have this.
Thank you. Coco is the other cat, by the way. The annoying one. Janet's cat. So, as Janet was saying, unsplash.com is a very good way to get images that are definitely available to be used for public use or non-commercial use. In addition to that, I would say that if you want to create, for example, beautiful environments and things like that, there are other ways you can do it. One of the most easy ways to do it, in fact, is... Is everything okay? Janet got one cat in the bedroom and then the other one jumped in. So, as I was saying, another way to do it, especially if you want to create your own designs and to create your own environments, is to use 3D software like, help me out, beautiful map making tool that we're using, like, not the one we draft source code, but
Project Deus?
No, 3-dimensional program like pixels, covers, and maps. Flowscape, thank you very much for judgment.
Oh, the chat also jumped in there for Flowscape as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
I'm just tired.
Yeah, Flowscape is a phenomenal resource. You can build your own scenes. You can build big scenes. You can build little scenes. You can resize the icons to change the scale of what you're building, right? And it's all animated, so you can take like screen grabs of it and then embed YouTube videos into your world and show it and music and it's so good. There is a video that I did about map making softwares, and there's a whole feature on Flowscape in there. It costs like
Hello everybody, welcome to tonight's stream. It's good to have you all here, and we got some folks still watching the awesome World Anvil update stream, which is currently happening on twitch.tv/World Anvil. So we're going to give them a little bit of time to wrap up there before we jump right into today's stuff, which is all about your questions about role-playing. I have to ask, are you guys getting in your role-playing? Are you managing to actually get role-playing happening? I must admit, I thought that there was going to be a lot more role-playing going on, but Yeah, I've had bits and pieces, but lots of people, even though they're stuck at home, they're just not getting an opportunity to play, or they sign up to play and then they leave. The most asked question that I have been getting over the last 2 or 3 weeks is, how do you stop people from flaking out? It's like, well, most people are trapped in their homes. Why aren't they playing? And I think it's because, well, I'm not entirely sure why, actually. So how are you guys getting in your games? Are you getting in your games? Have you switched over to online role-playing, or are you just kind of going, well, no, not really playing anything at all, actually? Let me know. I'd love to. I'm genuinely curious as to what's going on in your world. I mean, that's why we're here. So there we are. Adrian 1976 hasn't got any audio, so I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know. How do we sign? Do we sign? I mean, I can't sign. I absolutely cannot sign. So, Lance Pickett saying, hello, allemaal. Ja, aangename kennis, meneer, I think is the appropriate one. Or middag, meneer. I don't know. My Afrikaans is so bad. It's terrible. Anyway. So there we are. White Tiger jumping straight in with questions. That's brilliant. Same with Xander the Green. I will come to those shortly. Let's see. More questions coming through. I play CNC. I'm looking like an idiot now. CNC, Call and Cthulhu. Is that where you get to play as one of Cthulhu's minions? 3 times a week with Fantasy Grounds. There we go. So absolutely. That's from MTMJ Moondog. Just finished a game, says Mr. Zay. So there we are. Lovely. BK Dan has got some problems. Just remember to put the word question, please, if you're new to the stream. If you are new to the stream, please remember, preface your question with the word question in caps. You can see... I mean, that's not bad. It's not bad, but caps is better, and hopefully caps, someone will actually ask it with a cap that I can actually point out to you. Laura Bones had 2 games today. Oh, but Laura, I mean, you're just a machine. I mean, you just play. It's lovely. I very much enjoy playing with Laura when she's around. Xander's saying, is it lagging? I hope it's not lagging. From my side, we're green across the board, but you never know. These days, you just never know. Let me just go and check what YouTube is busy saying we're doing. Well, YouTube on my side doesn't even say that it's live. So I'm not sure what YouTube channel you're watching. Hopefully you're watching the... Oh, there we go. It does say it's live. Okay. No, that's not how I get there. Can I view in the live dashboard? Just getting there. Give me a chance. Oh, YouTube says we're green, so shouldn't be any buffering or anything along those lines. So do watch out for that. If you are having it buffering, then maybe drop your resolution. That's fancy way of saying that. Okay, so quick question: do we use these gift card things? These wonderful things from Lawsmith. These random decks of things. Should we use these every time someone asks us a question? I think we should do that. I thought that was quite fun. So there we are. Watcher2417 says, why is there a stream with you and Kaora at the same time? At the same time of what? There isn't a stream with me and Kaora at the moment. I'm just me on my own, I think. So there we are. Anyway, yeah, shall we use these? Yes, says a couple of them. The card's very fun. So there we are. All right, I'm going to pull them out. And I'm going to do it obviously a particular way. So if Kaora is streaming at the moment, then that's what he's doing. So there we are. Choose which one. And there's the raid from World Anvil. Thank you, World Anvil. I really do appreciate that raid. Welcome, World Anvilites. Welcome. So I am going to place these cards. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with these cards, as you can't really, or you might be able to see, there we go. So you can see they've got 2 categories, one at the top and one at the bottom. And the way that the deck works is that you draw 2 cards and you combine the top and the bottom together, and that's what you get. So this deck is Fumbled Searchers. left. So I'm just going to shuffle these quickly. You can hear that. Frederick Schmidt saying I need to get better loot next time. I don't remember what you got. A soggy boot or something. All right, so I've shuffled them. I put them face down. Now, what I particularly... at first I didn't like it, I will be honest with you. But for the stream, I actually kind of like it because it forces me to be honest. I'm just busy stacking the deck here to make sure I get all the jokers. Is that the backs are identical. So this is the one deck, and that's the other deck. Do you see how they are absolutely identical? So I can't tell. This one is the Voyage, so that's whoever gets that is going on a journey. And then, let's see here. This is the nice deck. This is the Curious Treasures. So I've put them on the desk in front of me. You just have to trust me. And now I'm just going to randomly move them around. And I'm not actually even... I mean, I suppose I could... I don't want to box them because that would be an absolute nightmare. I really don't want to do that. So just move them around. We're going to get to your questions shortly. Now, I have absolutely no idea what order they are in because I've been grabbing them and moving them around. And so there we go. We've got them shuffled right. So that means whenever you ask a question and I actually get to answer it, I will randomly draw from one of these decks 2 cards and give you something as a result of you asking that question. So that's how we're going to do it. That's what we are going to do. And that's where we are. Right. So let us get in to the reason why we're here is for you to ask questions about your role-playing games and how we can move forward on that. So, White Tiger's question has been burning, and there it is. You can see it. Lovely book worth of question there. I'm, of course, exaggerating, but that's my job. I'm a GM. Anyway, White Tiger says, I'm thinking of having my characters write summaries on their backstories so I have notes on what they seem most interested in. Does this seem like a good move or maybe too obvious? Maybe if I reward them for it. Okay, so you're setting yourself up for a whole bunch of problems here, as far as I can see it, right? So, firstly, I'm thinking of having my characters write summaries on their backstory. So, they've written backstories, but this backstory is too long. Is that what you're saying? And so you want them to condense it down? Or are you saying basically you want them to take their summary and sort of almost highlight, these are the important bits to me? I always find that it's much more interesting to take those backstories and you choose elements from that you want to focus on. Because yes, they've written a backstory and they've got things that they like. I have a history, my personal history. I look at it and I go, oh, I wish I could, there's that one person that I met. I'd like to meet them again, except not if they're undead, obviously. Or they're those people that I really wouldn't want to meet again. And I put them in the backstory because it was for flavor. I also find that when players have put very specific information into their backstory, that's the stuff you actually want to try and avoid. Because oftentimes they've had this scene in their head that they have created and they've played it through and they've dreamed about it and they've incorporated it into themselves. And then you come bumbling along completely unaware of all of the back context that they had whilst creating that backstory. And you now present the character in some different light and they go, oh, but that's not what they're like actually. Actually, no. I should also warn you, I've been binge watching Vicar of Dibley all afternoon instead of working. So be prepared. If you don't know Vicar of Dibley, it was a Dawn French production, Richard Curtis comedy show in the late 90s. So yes, I will be channeling my inner Alice Tinker from time to time tonight. Anyway, there we are. So I see World Anvil has also been binging Vicar of Dibley. I couldn't get out of I love Vicar of Dibley anyway. All right, so hopefully that will put you on the right direction, White Tiger 225. I'm going to draw randomly from deck 1, 2, or 3. I'm going to go with 3. And so you are getting a frail-looking primitive bone flute. That is what you have picked up, a frail-looking primitive bone flute. That is interesting. Okay, Watcher2417 says, how can I offer the player characters in adventures various options, all of which lead to the goal of advancing the master plot, without preparing every way for hours for each adventure? Wow. Okay, so let's break that down. That's a very, very good question, and it's a very complicated question. And I think that the easiest way to answer that is simply by saying, okay, let's start at the beginning. How can I offer the player characters in adventures various options? Okay, options to get them to your particular adventure. You talk about hooks. So how do you hook the players in? There are several different types of style that you can go with in terms of hooking the players in. Oftentimes, it could be through collision, so the characters, they literally collide with someone in the plot. It could be that they already start on it if it's the first adventure. It could be that they see something happening. It could be that they find something, so the point is that most of the time players will respond well to adventure hooks when it is personal. So I always say make it personal. So if you want the characters to go and find out about the assassination of the king, that's not particularly personal. But if they get a letter written to them by a friend, an old high school friend that you've got from their backstories somewhere, who happens to be, if the family has a noble background, is a minor count, and they're inviting this person to come to the court to be part of the inauguration or whatever's going on. Or if they're not rich, if they're poor, it could be a servant saying, hey, listen, please come to the church or to the castle. We've been invited as members to see the king arriving. I think we had a lot of fun, and I remember you being a monarchist or whatever. So make it personal, and that will help sort of guide them in a certain way to get them to go on that route. If you're talking about just how do you create the adventure line, I think I'm going to refer you to last week's Great GM video where we were talking about control and the whole idea of events and triggers. You don't have to plan out the entire adventure. You just need to plan out the events and what will trigger them for that particular adventure. So in the next couple of weeks, you're going to be seeing a lot more videos on my channel as to how to do this in its simplest form. I've been looking at the advice that we've given out over the years on the channel and going, okay, how do we distill this so that it's a lot easier? So this coming week, for example, we've done control and we've done authority, which is still talking about triggers, making the right call. Coming up this week is how to make an adventure. There's 5 basic steps you need to follow. So in answering your question, once you understand those 5 basic steps, the first step is I would say it's the most tricky one because it is heading them into that plot, getting them into that adventure to begin with. So we will be unpacking that in the future videos as well. But generally, try and make it personal. That will get them in there. So we had from deck 3. I'm going to go from deck 2 now. You get a Gleaming Onyx Warhorn. A Gleaming Onyx Warhorn. Now that could be fun. That could be fun indeed. Okay, BK Dan says, my group is using Zoom for video and audio and Roll20 for maps and handouts. What do you use? Well, I use Zoom, absolutely. I use Zoom. I run OBS first, OBS, which is the studio-based version. Of the computer-based version, not OBS Studio. It is the computer-based version of OBS, and that allows me to put in backgrounds and do all of these kinds of overlays and things, as one so might like. But I use Zoom for all of my chat calls and gameplay and that sort of thing. I don't use Roll20 for map overlays because there's a whole bunch of extra stuff that Roll20 is capable of doing, which I don't need it to do. I actually just use Dungeon Fog for my map overlays and that sort of thing, because then I can make the map in Dungeon Fog and then the characters can actually interact with it. So one example, the characters wanted to drag a bench and place a bench across a sort of a gap, and they could literally pick up the bench and put it over the gap and see that the bench fitted or didn't fit. So I use why has it gone out of my head? Dungeon Fog for that. I'm busy thinking battle maps. So yes, Dungeon Fog is what I use primarily for that sort of thing. You're going to see it coming up a lot more as well in the future. We've now, it's kind of kept secret from Dungeon Fog for quite a while. It doesn't have any die rollers or anything like that. For that, quite literally, I have a dice tray sitting right here, and I use my dice tray, and my players use their dice, and we just trust that they don't cheat. And if they do cheat, it's their choice, not mine. So there we are. Okay, so I hope that helps you. I have done a little video, a very, 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 very fast video. If you go to my YouTube channel, and that's the youtube.com/how to be a great game master. That one long word. And there is actually a video there called How to Play Online, and it's about 6.5 seconds long. Brace yourself. It's very, very quick. And you get a bug-infested velvet coin purse. That's what you get. A bug-infested velvet coin purse for your question. Ben Nicholson saying, "Lol, I like the Vicar of Dibley." I do too. I mean, as a historian and as someone who works in television and works in film and that sort of thing, watching Vicar of Dibley is very, very interesting because, of course, a lot of what they were dealing with, women in the religious space, women within the church, the whole homosexuality thing, there was lots of things that they were dealing with that were very, very, very top of mind in that period. And to look back at it now, you kind of go, oh, that was very, very bluntly done. And a lot of it is, anyway, it's still fun. If you remember, it's in that context. Okay, Serpent's Embrace 2 says, question revision question. All 3 of my players are very passive, and I want to encourage them to be more active so I don't feel just like a storyteller. Do you have any tips or videos to suggest? So Serpent's Embrace 2, it's an interesting challenge. With passive players, it does mean that they are not going to be triggering events to occur. Those adventures are going to be very, very difficult to get them onto. So that means a lot of the adventures are going to have to land on them. And a good way of thinking about it is, and it's a film. You don't necessarily want to run those styles, but the Peter Sellers Pink Panther movies. I'm trying to think of a more contemporary one. There was one that Adam Sandler did with, crikey, her name's just gone out of my head. She was the main character from Friends, and she's still actually acting. Not Courtney Cox, not Phoebe. It was her. Anyway, she and Adam Sandler did this film for Netflix, where they end up in the middle of this murder mystery, and there's this crazy millionaire, and they go into Italy. It's very amusing. It's mildly amusing. Not Arquette. No, the famous one, the big one, the one who's still beautiful. Jennifer Aniston. There we go. Aniston. There we go. So she and Adam Sandler did this film. The point I'm trying to make is that what happened was that they're very passive as a story. If everything didn't land in their laps, nothing would have moved forward. They would have gone on holiday and they would have come back from holiday. So with your passive players, it's all about making sure the adventure lands in their laps. So the orphan runs across the street and literally bumps into them, hides a note in their purse, and then runs off as the guards run past. They then find the note, and then that will prompt. And if they find the note and they don't do anything about it, then you need to have a very serious conversation with them as people, as players, and say, listen, folks, this is my challenge. You're very passive. Let's understand why they're not making choices. It could be because when they do make choices, and I'm not saying that this is the case, but it is something to reflect upon. It could be that when they make choices, it feels like you're punishing them for making choices that you didn't want them to make. Now, I say this, I don't know your situation, but I do know that sometimes that can be an issue where the GM goes, oh, but that was a stupid decision to make, so I'm going to punish you. So just reflect. Maybe that's a thing. If it isn't a thing, if it's definitely not a thing, then it could be that they simply don't know that they have license to do that. I have had players who don't know that they can do all of this kind of cool and crazy things. So bear that in mind. It could be that they are just genuinely passive, in which case, can I suggest you go over to rpgtablefinder.com and find another member to join. You can post up your table there, find another member to join, and add in someone who's going to lead the party and take charge. So for that question, I've done 1, 2, and 3, so we're going to start again on 2. For that question, you get a gold marbled pocket sundial. Well, that's always useful. A gold marbled pocket sundial. I mean, a pocket sundial is very useful. Put it in your pocket, take it wherever you like, and, set it up. And as long as there's sun, you'll know the time. That's brilliant. Just make sure that you have to rotate it to the right direction. Anyway, there we are. Lara Lepine says, from the Daily Mail, Dawn French announces the Vicar of Dibley is set to return after 5 years for BBC's Big Night. That's interesting. I don't know how I feel about that, actually. I don't know how I feel about that, because I was binge watching and I got to season 4, it's definitely some years after season 3, and everyone's fatter and older, and it's like, well, that's too much like real life. I'm definitely fatter and older and that sort of thing. So anyway, it will be fun to see what they do. It really will be fun to see what they do. Okay, looking for questions. Spanky Prank says, I love your YouTube DM channel. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. Okay. Trey has just said, I just bought your PDFs, Guy. I think that's bought. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. I hope they're useful to you. So far, the feedback we've been getting on Complete Guide to Nautical Campaigns, on the hard copy of the book, people are very happy with it. Well, except for the people who had a little bit of a shipping problem and had to pay $5,000 to actually get the book. That has subsequently been resolved by the shipping company, and they did not have to pay $5,000 to get the book. That was all resolved. So I'm very grateful to hear that. CD10 Toblin says, more of a player question than GM. How do you do, what do you do to get into character in a new character? How do you find their cadence, personality, and behavior? Well, it's a good question. It's a really good question. And I will be the first to admit that when I start playing a character, I have it in my head. I'm like, oh, I want the character to be like this. I want the character to be like that. And then I actually start playing. And that's, again, why I like a session 0 or two session zeros, actually, to kind of get into that space to find that voice. Also, what I will generally do is base the character on someone that I want to emulate. So an actor or a character from a series. Now, specifically from a series, not from a book. And the reason is it's a lot easier to mimic and to go, well, what would that person do in that particular instance? What would they say? How would they do? It's a lot easier to do that, to begin with anyway, than it is to try and come up with someone from scratch. That's me personally. I mean, I don't go for the whole find their emotional center and become one with them and that sort of thing. I mean, that I think that's taking it too far. So I like to mimic, and I go, okay, well, I want this character to be like that. So I've got a character that's coming up in Michael Kessevan's game that we're going to be playing, and I believe I've just read a message from him saying that launches on the 30th of April. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm playing this lawyer, this barrister in Victoriana, England. And he is based very specifically on a character that I developed for the YouTube channel, Jonathan Swift, who's a bit of a... Well, he's not particularly smart, and old Jonathan isn't really. And it takes a little bit of time to sort of get back into Jonathan's head, and he speaks with quite wide mouth because, well, that's just how he grew up, and his voice is a little bit deeper and that sort of thing. And he's a complete and utter moron, really, unless you're asking him about something that he knows very much about, such as, philately and lepidopterist activities, map making, not a clue really. So, but I have taken a long time to kind of get to, and if you watch earlier episodes of the channel, he kind of popped up before we became a true character. So yes, that's how I do it, is find a character that I think is similar, and then try and mimic that character to begin with, and then to move it forward, and then to develop and let them find their own voice then once the role-playing has started. So that will get you from 1 or 3. I'm going to go with 1. You get a brightly glowing grappling hook. Very useful for breaking into places, because as you throw it, it has this bright light, so you can see where you're sneaking into. Very useful, very practical. Definitely. Something that you will want to take with you the next time you try and steal the crown jewels. Anyway. So there we are. Okay, Spanky Prank says, I'm running a sci-fi alien hunter homebrew. Okay, inspiration from Space Dandy and The Expanse. I haven't seen Space Dandy, but I have seen The Expanse and absolutely loved it. If I create aliens on the spot, they're too humanoid. What tricks or tips do you have for improving some aliens? Well, Jack Cohen wrote a book called Evolving the Alien, which I actually spoke extensively about on my YouTube channel. So you're on Twitch at the moment, Spanky, but if you head on over to my main YouTube channel, that's called youtube.com/how to be a great game master in one long stretch. There is an episode called, I don't think I actually called it Evolving the Alien, but I think it was called Aliens or Sci-Fi Aliens, Making Aliens Work. The bottom line is we make them humanoid for a whole bunch of reasons, and there's lots of different explanations as to why aliens are humanoid, and it's not just budget reasons and that sort of thing. Trying to make aliens not humanoid, what you have to shift fundamentally in your mind is, let's say, from a non-humanoid perspective, let's say that centipedes somehow manage to get a cerebral capacity to want to change their world. Centipedes started to use grass to build little huts and things. We know that there are many animals that do use tools, but let's say centipedes did this, and then they started to eat fish, and that gave them better intelligence. Supposedly the amino acids helped build the brain, and eventually the centipedes started to build little structures, and then they started to defend those structures, and somehow a language started and a civilization grew up. Would they build things in the same way? Would they have discovered steel? Would they have discovered circuitry? Assumedly, yes, in order to get into space. Or was there something on their planet that got them into space in the first place? Some sort of maybe rock that floats up into the stratosphere, or maybe their planet doesn't have an atmosphere and they could just leap off of it and float through space, and then they grow in size, and then there's a bacteria that's actually on them that evolves in intelligence. You've got to think about that whole long chain. Now, when you're talking about doing it on the fly, oftentimes it's best not to think about all of that kind of stuff, but to go, you know what? The players don't know what this thing is. That's a strength and a weakness of sci-fi. The characters don't know what this is either. So that means I don't actually have to have the answers for it. I can just let my mind go crazy for now, and later on after the session go and fix it and fill in the gaps. So it's a case of the most iconic alien I can think of, which really doesn't make a huge amount of sense, is the alien from Mass Effect. I can't think of their names right now, but they're basically a man of war, a giant floating sack of tendrils that bioluminesce and speak in a multiple voice type of scenario. We don't ever learn too much about them. Of course, it's role playing. So I mean, it's, you know, something about the benefit that role playing has in tabletop TRPG versus computer RPG is that we can ask those questions. We're not stuck to dialogue choices. So, yeah, I would always fudge it. Oh, you come across this strange alien. It looks like it's a silicon-based alien, and it's shaped more like a rock than anything else. Star Trek did that once. And your scans just don't reveal any information about it, you know. And your check, yes, you passed your check, brilliant, that's wonderful. You recognize these as the creatures known as the Fune that come from a nebula and don't actually have a homeworld. They're mostly gaseous, and scientists don't yet understand how they work. Ha ha! I mean, that's one way of doing it. All right, you're going to get from, I don't think, what have we done? 1, 3, 2, I can't remember anymore, so I'm going to go from, I think I've done this. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You get a mermaid motif rod puppet. A mermaid rod puppet. There you are. A mermaid the 10 points to you, SW Ont Gamer. Yes, the Horta. The Horta. So there you are. And the Hannah, 10 points to you, CD10 Toblin. The Hannah from Mass Effect. The Horta from Star Trek. There we are. Lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay, Ryan the Wolf says, how do you feel about the Critical Role Exploree's Guide to Wildnaut book? I haven't got it. I do hear from those that collect these books, that use all of these books, that this is probably one of the best that Wizards has released. And a lot of people say it's the best because it is one of the first original ones that have come out in a long time, and that Wizards wasn't really involved in the making of it outside of putting it together and putting it under their brand. So I believe it's really fun. I believe it's a cool setting, but I haven't looked at it personally because I can quite honestly say that I have never run a game in a pre-built environment or setting other than the Star Trek and Star Wars stuff. Because even when you look at Ghosts of Saltmarsh or the Descent into Avernus stuff, I basically took the book and used their NPC names, and that was about it. But that's me personally. I would far rather make up my own stories and my own settings than use somebody else's pre-generated stuff. But I do believe that it is quite excellent source material, better than Eberron, apparently. Anyway, you get a ghostly, billowing... That's awful. You get a ghostly, billowing fungal growth. I don't know where the fungus has grown, and I don't know why it's ghostly or billowing. Perhaps it sort of has white wispy stuff coming off of it. That's awful. I'm sorry. That's what you get. There we are. You're just going to have to live with it. We'll find a cure. A quest! See? Making it personal, and suddenly now we're on a quest to find the answer to this fungal growth. The XYR1 says, you helped me a while back concerning character leadership, which went without a hitch. Awesome! Question has disappeared. What would be some dynamic development ideas I can apply? Wow, okay. You will have to remind me on what I helped you with regards to character leadership. But in terms of dynamic development, what do you mean? Dynamic development ideas within the party itself? Is that what you mean? Please re-ask that question and just put there re-ask or more info or something along those lines. Please let me know about that. So, right. Eddie Norman says, what do you think about twist villains? Oliver Twist! No, wait, what? What's a twist villain? I'm not sure. Is that a villain who becomes suddenly an ally, or an ally who suddenly becomes a villain? I call those mentor villains, but twist villains, people, I'm assuming, people who started out being nice to the party and then suddenly turn around and become evil. I think twist villains are fun done once or twice a campaign, because otherwise your players are never going to trust anybody that they meet, and you will have severe difficulty getting them to actually bond with NPCs because they'll be waiting for the moment the NPC twists on them. So, fun in books, fun in TV series, not fun when you are the player character and everyone that you think is helping you suddenly turns on you. You become incredibly paranoid. It's very dangerous to do. I used to do that a lot when I was a younger GM, and I got called out on it by my players, and that sort of brought light to me. So yes, bear that in mind. On the other hand, if you do it correctly, and you've hinted that this villain is going to twist, that this is actually a villain, that there could be some skullduggery afoot, then it can work. But you need to set it up beforehand. Let the players, over the course of different adventures, bear in mind, have some suspicions that maybe this person is not as nice as they seem to be, and maybe they are, maybe they're not, maybe they are, maybe they're not. So when they twist, the PCs can fall back on that good old-fashioned, aha, we knew it. We knew it. We didn't know it, but we knew it, but we kind of knew. I mean, we felt it. It was in my waters that this was going to happen, yeah. You give them that, then they have a sense of satisfaction when that twist happens. But if you just do the twist cold-faced and they never saw it coming, it'd be like, well, surely we didn't see anything. That's very, very odd. And I know that happens in real life, but yes, we don't necessarily want to do that. So bear that in mind. Right, next question. Oh wait, you get a thingy. You get a bag of dried smoking pipe. A bag of dried smoking pipe. Is this from the same set? Yes, it is. So I'm going to change that to a bag of dried pipeweed so that you can smoke it in a pipe if you had one. A bag of dried pipeweed. That is what you find. An old bag of pipeweed. Right. That was your question. Lance Pickett says, Part 1. Oh dear. I've been toying with a system that instead of everyone having the same groups of attributes, they choose ability groups. That's it's. I'm not. Is there a? It's part 1, part 2. Okay, they pick 4 of 20 of these groups that they roll, which they roll stats for. In other areas, they have 50% chance, giving very unique characters. What are your thoughts on this? So there. I mean, look, it's not a bad idea. I mean, as far as random ideas go in terms of character creation. That's a lot of things. Are they going to choose skills on top of that? Are they going to choose other things on top of that? What's the goal? I mean, what's the purpose? So that's my design philosophy. When I'm trying to create homebrew rules or I'm doing something along those lines, I always look at it and say, well, how do we do this so that the character that the player makes is something that they want to actually play and is usable? So, recently, obviously, I've done the try system, which we used for Wizards of Konbari, and that we tweaked and refined as it was going along. The poor players were getting rules updates as it was coming out. We said, okay, let's transpose that directly into a science fiction game, which is my next game coming up. And again, now we're having to readjust because the players are saying, well, if I want to be a starship captain, I've got to do all of this stuff. But if I want to be actually a fighter, I've got to do that stuff. So I'm not sure. So game balance is always about making sure that players end up with a character that functions within the various roles that they might find themselves in. That's why fantasy, I think, is so accessible. If you're a wizard, Harry. You need to be a wizard and you need to do things that wizards do. But if you're a fighter, you do things a fighter does. When you're in science fiction or modern day, think about all the hats you wear. At home, you're maybe a computer game player or you're a role player, but at work, you might be an industrial heavy machinery operator. I mean, I don't know. So there's various options that you can go with on that one. So that's my initial thoughts. I mean, it's game design is a fascinating rabbit hole of terror and fun, and I would recommend it to everybody, but it can be tricky. Okay, for that you get a triangular-shaped pile of rat bones. A triangular-shaped pile of rat bones. Ooh, there we go. Wow. Okay, so WASD 20 is in or on YouTube, or was on YouTube briefly. Nate, good to see you around. Hope things are going well your side of the world. He says there, I think it's a great example of world building. Mercer sets a great example of taking D20's core and then tweaking and twisting it into making something new. Well, there we go. Lovely. Absolutely. I don't know if Nate has done a review on it. If he has, go and have a look at that on his YouTube channel, WASD20. There you are. Unimportant hero. I think you should change your name, actually, because you were one of the people who was instrumental in getting me to move to Tokyo in the first place. But anyway, right. Lawrence Carnarvon has a question. How does one make a world feel like one unified place and not just a bunch of unconnected locations? It's an interesting question, and there's no doubt about it. And the how can I put it? I've had the opportunity of working very closely with Janet from World Anvil, and with other sort of world creators and world builders and that sort of thing. And the very wrong place to look is computer games for inspiration. That's the very wrong place to look at it, because when you look at a computer game, the way computer games are designed is that this world or this location has this feel, it's got this color palette, it's got this, it's got that, it's got the next thing. And that's wrong. If you travel around the globe here on our own little planet, I agree in terms of the colors are different. If I think of the color of Tokyo and the color of Japan, it is quite different from the color of the UK. And it's very different from the color of Africa, or South Africa anyway. And that's different from the color of the US. But there's lots of similarities as well. And it's the similarities that, in my thinking, unite things across. So I will never forget, absolutely never forget, and I think I've said this before, so I hope I don't bore you again. I was sitting in a ward office in Japan, completely oblivious to what was going on around me. But in the cubicles, the way this ward office was set up was a big room, just imagine this big room, and then there's the little dividers. Not very high, sort of desk dividers and things. And then behind that was the working hub of this ward office. Now, the ward office is basically your car insurance, life insurance, everything that you need to do in one building, in one floor, as a matter of fact. So you'd go there to apply for resident permanent. You'd go there for everything you needed. Very, very efficient, very, very nice people as well. But you could see in the back office, you could see that lady there who's speaking a language I have no idea what she's saying. I can see that she's the old one that knows all the processes and is a little bit of the leader. And there's the one that she works hard because she's definitely a hard worker, but she also goes out late at night. And the old one is slightly envious of her, but at the same time also slightly judging, you know. And you go, I could have seen that in Africa. I could have seen that here in the UK. I could have seen that in the US. I could have seen that anywhere. That is what brings us together. So it's not about common this or common that. There are some things that need to be across your world. So if it works really well, it will probably be implemented everywhere. Motor cars are almost everywhere because they work very well at getting stuff from point A to point B. So have your flavor, but at the same time have the stuff that makes it sound absolutely real. So something for me that I used to do when I was in Tokyo, and I use it because it's the most extreme culture that I've had the pleasure of living in, is I would look at all of the restaurants and I go, I can't read the name of that. I don't even know what that is. I know that contains eel and I don't like eel. I learned the symbols of things that I didn't like a lot faster than the symbols of stuff that I did like. And I would go, Taco Bell. I have never had Taco Bell before, even when I was in the States, but I know that that's a fast food restaurant chain and it should taste sort of like, well, I mean, it won't taste like anything else, but I also know that it most likely won't contain raw egg or eel or fish or... So if your players go into a different section of the world, to sometimes have something that's common will make it feel like a homogeneous world very, very quickly. Without the shadow of a doubt. You can see I'm quite passionate about that because people tend to go, oh no, it's the orcs. There's nothing in here that's the same as the human kingdom over there. No, that's complete rubbish. There should be a lot of stuff that's the same because the orcs are not going to be living in isolation, and if they are, then it's going to be a very different situation. Okay, right. For that long question, you get a fur-wrapped. Okay. A fur-wrapped woven twig choker. I had to read that quite carefully because for a moment my mind went to PG R18/24. A woven twig choker that is fur wrapped. So the choker is the thing that sits around a woman's neck. It's usually a thin little band with a little diamond in the middle of it. It's made, designed to show off the neckline and the occipital mapillary, which is the little V that you have, well, the thin people have at the base of their throats, part of the your collarbone. So you have a wool-lined one there. Christian Callies says, what are your thoughts on aberrations in Dungeons and Dragons? Have you ever used an Arbaleth as a main antagonist in any of your games? Aberrations are very interesting, and Arbaleths, or Aberleths, however you want to pronounce it, Aberleths certainly can be a central focal point. I don't think I have ever used one specifically in a long-running game. It is interesting. There is spoiler. There is one in Ghosts of Saltmarsh in the D&D campaign that they released. There is an Arbaleth in there. It's interesting. It really is an interesting question in terms of how much do you want to twist or change your narrative? Because Arbaleths, with their whole mind controlling thing and making thralls and sending them out to go and do their bidding and all that kind of thing, it can be very, very interesting. But again, you have to have that end game in mind. How are the players going to defeat it ultimately? And if it's going to just sort of return into the bubbly shadows and that sort of thing, that can be quite unsatisfying as a player to get to that point. If, on the other hand, they are fighting against a duke and it's a long campaign and they defeat the duke and then they discover this strange little tendril at the back of the duke's neck and a whisper saying, "I will return." This thing disappears into the darkness. That could be something interesting to launch the next campaign, in which case it was a never-present nemesis that they didn't even know they were fighting. They were primarily fighting the duke, so it would be a point to get further on that one. And you get a lion emblazoned shoulder pad. A lion emblazoned shoulder pad. Hear me roar. A lion emblazoned shoulder pad for that question. So good question there. Ian Emery says, I've got a player who I think is cheating. She hasn't rolled lower than a 14 in about a month. Should I bring it up or continue on because no one has complained so far? It's a tricky one. It is a tricky one. And I get frustrated when players cheat and they just seem to always roll positive numbers when they think they need to roll positive numbers, and when they think it is nothing important, then they'll fail it so that it doesn't look like they're cheating. The saddest thing for me is that cheaters, it is impossible for them to conceptualize the fact that everybody else knows that they're cheating. They think they're brilliant at hiding the fact that they're cheating, but they're not. They're cheating. It's obvious when humans cheat. It doesn't matter how good an actor you are, I think anyway. It's a case of, wow, statistically, you've never failed a roll. Except for the ones that you chose to fail on. And we saw you choosing to fail them because you didn't take as long to work out what number you needed to have rolled in order to succeed at the check. Or there's a tell. There's always a tell. So I would look at it from two perspectives. If you raise it with them and they say, oh, I don't cheat, what are you going to do? Are you going to force the issue? Are you going to say, well, please stop? I'm assuming that you're not sitting at the same table. I had a player who used to roll the die, and as it was about to finish rolling, pick the die up and then be able to rotate it to whichever side they knew the number was better on. And I played with that particular individual because I didn't have a choice in that particular matter. They were part of the friendship group, and raising the cheating aspect didn't work because they would just vehemently deny it. Do you break up the group? Do you stop role-playing with them? This was 1999, 2000, so before we really had internet, there was no ways of playing online. I remember once we tried to play using Skype, and that was an absolute disaster. So I would question, does it affect the game? You know that you can rely on them to pass whatever check you need, so you could also turn that to your advantage and go, well, this role really needs to succeed here. I'm going to give it to that character, and then I know that I can't lose. So if it is an issue to you and you can't carry on playing with this person, then you have to raise it with them and see what they say. And if they say, oh, I don't cheat, you're really stuck. And then it's time to find a new group, and rpgtablefinder.com is something for you to have a look at if you so want to go in that direction. It's always tough, though. It's always tough. And I hate cheaters in role-playing games because you go, your imaginary number beat my imaginary number. You make up numbers, I make up numbers. We all make up numbers. They don't mean anything. Don't. That's not what you've missed the point. You really missed the point. Anyway, those are my thoughts on that one, and you get a icy howling curved dagger. An icy howling curved dagger. That will go well with that glowing grappling hook, I think, in terms of sneaking around with this howling grappling hook, or the howling dagger in a grappling hook. So there you are. Des Manor has asked, what is the curious goblin twitch point thingy? It is curious, isn't it? And it's definitely a goblin. You get, because I answer that question, a worthless assortment a worthless assortment of dented helmets. That's what you get for that question. A worthless assortment of dented helmets. Ouch. There you go. NN says, would you consider making a follow-up for your Epic Campaigns book with more examples of the sentence, how to use it, possible difficulties, and solutions? Well, NN, the next book is definitely on the way, and one of the things I was doing this afternoon was designing the cover for that book. I know it's weird. I should probably be writing the book before I design the cover for it, but I've recently... Well, I like designing characters and things, so I've been designing the cover for it, but in terms of the follow-up to the Epic Campaigns, I would like to personally rewrite Epic Campaigns and add to it. You know, it was our first book that it was the first official book that I have ever written and self-published, and I would like to revisit it. And especially with the new batch of videos that have come out, where we have well, where I have been taking now 3 years worth of comments and questions from you guys and refining it and reworking it and going, well, this could work this way, or let me try that explanation as well. Let me try this route. Something that we're doing now, and you'll notice this if you watch the more recent videos, is we are moving away from this whole notion of Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Use the script writing formula. It was useful, as it was the only way that I could find of expressing how to tell these stories, but I don't think it was necessarily as useful as it could have been in terms of helping you to understand how to make adventures in a better way or in an easier way. So I would like to actually update that and re-release that. Now, we did do a podcast of that, the audio version of that book. And in that audio version, I explained things a little bit more. And I did do a video on the YouTube channel, How to Be a Great GM, recently actually, called 3 Tables You Really Need. I think that was what the title was. Fairly recently, about 4 weeks ago or so. Where I fill in that whole table. It's a long video. It's like an hour long where I go through and I fill in a lot of those tables. So that might help you if that's your pickle. For that, you get a richly carved pearwood lute. You can join the flute player, actually. You get a richly carved pearwood flute. Oh, pears. I haven't had a pear in a long time. A pear would be quite nice, actually. Got a pair of trousers, but that's not the same. Oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear. Right. Okay. Windslicer4 says, is the stream going to be archived? Absolutely. It will be available on this YouTube channel for now until YouTube shuts down, basically. Will never, ever be deleted. Okay. The XYR1 says, revised. My group as players approved my character leadership. Aha, I see. Okay, good. So they approved your character leadership. What would be some traits, actions, and flaws that would make this new development dynamic? Well, okay, look, I mean, the fact that they've approved your leadership doesn't mean that you have complete dictatorial control. A good leader is somebody who will turn to each of those party members and will assign them things that they need to do in order to provide you with support. So let's say, for example, you have a fighter in your group and you are now trying to decide how best to proceed. I would very specifically turn to that fighter and say, okay, look, what do you think we could expect in terms of the defenses, in terms of danger? How could we try and overcome that? Are there tactics that we should be using? What can you think of that will help us in terms of doing that? Then turn to the wizard and say, okay, so depending on what the fighter tells us, do you think they've got magical capabilities? Do you think they should be... A leader is not necessarily about someone who just makes a decision. It's about someone who prompts questions and gets the rest of the group to think about answers and solutions. But principally, it's about including the rest of your party now in the decision-making process. So what I love about leadership, or about a leader-like character, is that you can very much help the GM because you're drawing the other players into the adventure by getting them to buy into it because you've bought into it. So there's a double dynamic that happens when you become a leader within a role-playing group. The one is you are helping the group to advance. The other is you're helping the GM because you can see what the GM is doing. You can buy into their campaign. I mean, obviously, you could also completely buy into the wrong idea that the GM is doing and go in the exact opposite direction. But that's okay. You've still made a decision. So you're the decision maker and you're the inclusivism person. I don't even know if that's the right. I know it's not a word, but anyway. So yes, there we are. Right. So that is definitely something to do there. All right, and for that, you get a bent and rusty squid tentacle. A bent and rusty squid tentacle. So there you are, maybe an old-fashioned thing. An important hero says, on the topic of self-publishing books, how straightforward was the process to get book from draft to product on a digital storefront? Is there much barrier to entry in this process? Well, that's a very complicated question. We've only got 2 minutes left of the actual show itself. So long and short of it, writing the book, what I did differently from the first book to the second book. What I did differently, the first book is I had an editor read the book. They liked the book and they tried to edit it insofar as get it to sound right. to be linguistically correct as much as they could and that sort of thing. And that was great. What I did with the second book was my editor was much more hands-on. He's in the stream right now, Game Master's Vault, and he was a lot more abusive of the material. So although I actually don't know if he even likes the material, I never actually asked if he actually liked the system in the end. But and I think that's what was good. Was that he wasn't looking at it as perhaps, say, someone who was a fan, but he was looking at it as someone who was going to be asking questions saying, well, this is what's being presented, does it work? So I would say that whoever you get to edit your book, and you must get somebody else to edit your book, they should be as critical as possible, but at the same time, not stop you from writing. So that's the important thing. And I think that was the balance that Game Master's Vault got very, very right. There were many times when he would press for something, or would ask something, or he'd challenge something, and I would get frustrated. But at no point did I ever feel like, oh my God, that's it. I'm stopping writing this book. I have had many friends who have said, yeah, this is a waste of time. And that's caused me to stop. So you need to find somebody who will edit your work and keep you going without letting you get this big head because you've written this amazing thing. Then in terms of actually getting it published, well, the biggest barrier for me was the layout. So if you have got lots of diagrams and pictures and tables and all that kind of stuff, that becomes really, really complicated. And if you don't know how to use InDesign, which is an Adobe product, or if you don't have InDesign and you've got to go for something that is free to use or something along those lines, there's a barrier there. But getting it actually published is really, really simple. Blurb.com, the company that we use to print all of our books, they have templates for InDesign and a couple others actually, which I think are free. And you download the template and you kind of put stuff into it and off you go. And I mean, yes, you could use PowerPoint if you liked. I have actually done that for a module before. It worked, but not at a publishing level. Not at a publishing level. So bear that in mind. For that question, you get, I don't know which pile to go from. You get a funny smelling love letter. A funny smelling love letter. I love these things. I really do. I really, really, really do. A funny smelling love letter. There we are. There we are. Right. So, yeah. Well, there we are. There we are. Right now, I got an A+ from Game Master's Vault. That's really, really nice to hear. The end product is amazing. The book is beautiful. The content is sound and engaging. Well, that's all thanks to you. So there you are. Okay, folks, you have a fantastic evening moving forward. I've got some very brief things. I've converted all of those tables, by the way, now into form fillable PDFs. I haven't yet released them. I've had a wonderful, wonderful fan called Jerry who's been helping me with them. I made them. I've used them for a little bit, and I'm not particularly happy yet with the final result, but I am making those as I've now learned how to make forms in PDF. So that's very exciting. I will be releasing those onto the website at some point, hopefully in the next week or so. As I said, I've started to work on the next book. So thank you all for being here on this Sunday evening, for finding the new channel. When I found that banana costume, which some of you might have seen on the Twitter post that I sent up, I absolutely fell in love with it. Obviously, had to use it on an orc or the web goblin anyway. And if I ever found a real life banana costume, you can be sure the web goblin would have to wear that in public always. But anyway, enough nonsense from me. Thank you to Lawsmith for providing us with these amazing decks of craziness. To those of you whose questions I did not get to, I'm sorry. We'll see you again next week, same time, same channel, same, well, hopefully different underwear. Although I saw an advert, it was a GoFundMe for the same underwear. You don't ever have to change your underwear. You just wear this. I'm like, what? Anyway, we're not even going to go there. Until next time, I wish you all the very happiest of gaming.